Louisiana, same thing. Significant number of black people, a massive black population in Louisiana. And a lot of those folks didn't vote. And that's how MAGA Governor Jeff Landry, who was previously Attorney General, that's how he won. So guess what? In 9 days, voters in Louisiana have another election. They're going to decide on 4 proposed constitutional amendments for the state constitution. The changes concern the courts, taxes, juvenile treatment in the criminal justice system, and elections for judges. Activist Gary Chambers joins us right now from Baton Rouge. Gary, glad to have you here. Before we walk through, again, these amendments, and we know what happens, this is what some call an off election. And so these things typically pass because there is absolute small turnout. Are you seeing any signs that black people in Louisiana are waking the hell up?
Well, thank you for being a part of this conversation. As always, Roland, you elevate our voices here in Louisiana. But yes, I just finished a statewide tour with the Power Coalition going to Shreveport, Lake Charles, the river parishes, New Orleans, and my hometown of Baton Rouge to stimulate the conversation around these taxes, around this juvenile justice amendment that would allow more juveniles to be incarcerated as juveniles in the adult penitentiary. Not a single one of these policies is a benefit to the people of this state. And we have been moving the conversation to make sure that people knew about it. I hope that if a sleeper election gets 5 to 10% more people to show up that say no to all 4 of these amendments, that before the legislative session starts, that'll send a message to the governor and the legislature that these policies are not the direction that the people in this state desire to go in.
And let's be clear. Jeff Landry wants to lock up more black people. And when he was Attorney General, didn't he want to release or make public the juvenile records of folks in what? It was only, 2 counties, the largest 2 black counties in the 2 parishes, largest 2 black parishes in the state?
Absolutely. There was a policy that he was pushing as Attorney General as well as governor. In his first special session, he already made it, passed laws and signed into law more policies that would allow juveniles to go from juvenile penitentiaries to adult facilities. He is building more juvenile prisons as we speak. There's putting millions of dollars to the side to build juvenile detention facilities. This governor has been a disaster for young people in the state of Louisiana since the day that he took the oath of office. And I think that a lot of folks thought that things would be different or slept on the election, and now they're going to end up paying the consequence. But you have the ability to slow them down at the ballot right now. Early voting is actually going on now through Saturday. And if people are showing up at the polls, they understand that, number 2 is about taxes, Roland. They want to take $1.7 billion out of our revenue stabilization fund and move that money somewhere else. They want to tax whether or not you get taxes on takeout orders. There's a whole host of things that poor folks will end up paying more money in taxes because they want to give a flat tax, and they're going to give this impression that teachers are going to get a pay raise. They're giving it an impression that you're going to get more money in your paycheck. But at the end of the day, if the tax rate is taxing more things than sales taxes, poor people are paying more taxes out of this tax plan.
All right, so walk us through these 4, and from your point of view, how should voters, especially black voters, be voting on each one of these constitutional amendments? Just take us through 1 through 4.
So number 1, Roland, is about out-of-state lawyers being able to be penalized by the judiciary system here in Louisiana, allowing the state Supreme Court here in Louisiana to penalize out-of-state lawyers. That would be a problem for people like Ben Crump and Lee Merritt if people decided they wanted to make bar complaints against them as they come in and fight on cases like the Ronald Green case and other cases for civil rights that folks have been involved with trying to bring justice in this state. Constitutional Amendment number 2, and to be clear, on number 1, if you are an out-of-state lawyer and you violate our policies, there's already a procedure to go through to penalize those lawyers. Number 2 is a complete restructuring of our tax system here in Louisiana. Now, we do have a broken tax system here in the state of Louisiana. We have the highest sales taxes in the country, but this would give us a reduction in income taxes in some ways, but that reduction would end up in higher sales taxes than we already have. And we know that people who are poorer or have less money will be impacted by that more. So if you make $350,000 a year and this tax plan goes into place, you may not feel anything other than more money in your bank account. But if you make $50,000, $60,000 a year and they're taxing your takeout services, they're taxing your subscriptions, they're taxing more things, these things will cost you more money in the end because of the sales tax that's attached to what is going on. The other aspect of this is there's a myth in this plan where they're saying that teachers are going to get a pay raise. Well, the reality is it's a stipend that they're making permanent. It's not a raise or any extra money that teachers are going to get, but they're using that as a way to try to manipulate teachers into supporting this, when at the end of the day, they're moving protected funds into a different category in K through 12 education. Number 3 is extremely egregious, Roland, because number 3 gives the ability to give more penalties that they will incarcerate juveniles for. Now, if you're a juvenile and you commit murder, rape, or certain violent crimes, you already will be charged as an adult. This would take the Constitution and allow them to take those charges out of the Constitution. And so if a kid is at school, the kid happens to pick up his friend's cell phone, they say they stole a cell phone, the kid steals a cell phone, that kid could be then charged as an adult for a $500 theft in any situation, depending on the parish that you're in. And so looking at communities like where I'm from in Baton Rouge, you may have, in New Orleans, you may have somebody who's more progressive. But if you are in Ouachita Parish, if you are in Rapides Parish, if you are in Plaquemines Parish, Louisiana, those outcomes may be different for you when you encounter the judicial system, and those kids can end up in the Angola Penitentiary. And the 4th Constitutional Amendment gives the ability for races for judge to happen sooner if a vacancy happens on the judiciary. The reason that's a problem is a sleeper election just like this one would be able to elect judges when instead of putting them on the largest turnout election to come. So you got an election that just happened for a state senator here in Louisiana, where 9.5% of the people in the district showed up to vote in that election. Another district where 14% of the people showed up to vote in that election. There are people in power who want these low turnout elections because they get to determine who wins those races. That is not good for democracy. It is not good for the judiciary. It is not good for justice or the people of Louisiana, Roland.
Questions for my panel. Political Sis, you're first. Political Sis, can you hear me? Okay, you're on mute. You got to remember to take your mic off mute. So you're on mute. There you go. Go ahead.
Can you hear me, Gary? It's an honor to meet you.
Yeah, we got you.
79% in reference to Amendment 3. 79% of juveniles in secure settings, meaning like a detention center, that is what they're black men, black young boys, versus 14% of white. And it's the same around the high percentage points when it comes to non-secure settings, like in the custodial settings. This is directed at young black boys. How can we get this message out to our black folks in Louisiana? And sorry about the mute button.
Well, this is a part of the conversation for us. That's why we did these town halls all over the state. That's why we're glad Roland is here. I saw Sheriff Susan Hudson in New Orleans at the Super Sunday this last Sunday, talking to thousands of people in New Orleans about the need to get out and vote in this election. People are sounding the alarm that this is happening. We just need as many people around the country helping echo that so that people in this state pay attention to what's going on. We believe that this is a critical juncture for us as a community, as a state, because this is the opportunity to reject the policies that this legislature continues to try to jam down our throats. We know that this will target young black men. And listen, as somebody who was expelled in the 3rd grade, the 5th grade, the 6th grade, and the 7th grade, If it wasn't for a village who was there to surround me and support me, I would not be here. If these policies were in place in Louisiana when I was 12 years old, then I would have ended up deep in the justice system, and who knows where my life would have ended up. And so this is personal for me because I wasn't a good, rosy kid. I was one of the kids who got in trouble and got put out of school, who today is somebody better in my community because there was a village to love me.
Thank you.
Nola.
Thank you, Gary. Thank you so much for doing this work. It's so important. And, you know, being born and raised in New Orleans, and especially under the Morial regime, I'm a political scientist today because I came up in that environment where people were active and engaged in politics. So my question to you, and I've been wanting to have this conversation with you for a very long time, is about demographic shift and change. As we've been having this conversation about why people have become disinterested in voting in Louisiana, which, again, growing up, my experience was so different. And every time I go home and I talk to friends and I see the neighborhood shift, you know, you see the changes. The 6th Ward, the 7th Ward don't look the way that it used to, you know. And you will hear people talk about Hurricane Katrina being this turning point, in that I know in my own family, a lot of people left, right? Because the city just completely just fell apart. We couldn't trust our politicians, crime, you know, escalated, all these different things. Is some of this what we are seeing, this kind of apathy regarding voting? Does it have something to do with demographic shift? Because I've really been trying to figure out, like, what was that major shift from the 80s to now? You know, and I know that that's a big time span, but constantly, every time I go home, people will always talk about Katrina being a defining moment where a lot of Louisiana shifted and changed. And I'm just curious, would you agree or disagree with that?
I think that is an interesting perspective. I definitely think that demographic shifts impact the culture of the vote at the time. It definitely impacts who's stimulating the conversation and how that moves. I think we have enough Black folks in this state that we could be turning out. What I think impacts us the most is a level of disenchantment that turns to resentment, and that resentment turns to apathy. If my elected leaders continue to ignore the issues that are most important to me, the same way Chuck Schumer is ignoring the majority of his base right now, saying that they want to see a fighter, then the only way a voter can make a politician pay is not to support them, to support another candidate, or not to show up. If they feel like you aren't showing up for them in a meaningful way, then why should they show up to vote? And there's a lot of people who feel like government is not impacting my life in the ways that I would like to see it. So therefore, I am not going to participate in the process that is not benefiting me. Now, is that a perspective that is beneficial to us as a collective? No, because there's a whole host of things that government is doing that we need to be we need to be consistently fighting to make sure this stays in place, such as our civil rights that are now being eroded away. However, for young people who have no connectivity to a lot of these things, and for people who are disconnected from the process, civil rights are not the number one issue for them. Economic rights are. And we are not, as a collective, putting a grip on an economic policy for our community in a way that I think makes them bite the bullet and show up.
Reese.
Thank you.
Gary, I appreciate the work that you do, and you're the name I always invoke when I talk about how we have the capacity to make the difference in these elections. Can you talk a little bit about the amendment around the judiciary and how this is part of a pattern we're seeing around Republicans to take away the self-governance, the ability to have a judiciary actions be influenced by electeds that people are electing locally, as opposed to statewide or appointed judiciary oversight, that this amendment would help, shift the balance of power away to.
I'll give you an example. Here in Baton Rouge, Black Democrats in the last 2 election cycles became the majority of the judges in the 19th JDC, which is the local court system here in Baton Rouge. Well, if you have a judge that is removed or vacant for any reason, then you move the date of the election up. That helps the person with the most money win those races. What has helped black judges in a lot of cases here in Baton Rouge is if all of the judges are on the ballot at the same time, they are all raising money at the same time. And even if you don't have the most money, you can be competitive because there's a bunch of other black judges on the ballot. When you're the only black judge and you're struggling to raise $50,000 to be competitive in a race where somebody else may have $150,000 at the drop of their hat, that means that person is more competitive. It means that they get the majority on the local bench. And when they have the majority on the local bench, they determine the makeup of the court, what the court looks like, and how the court activates within your local community. That's the same makeup problem that other parishes that are majority black would face in this situation. And these are methodical ways that conservatives use policy in order to tweak the balances of power in their favor by making sure that there are as few as people possible showing up in these local elections.
All right, then. So, Gary, early voting is happening right now. When does it end?
This Saturday is the last day to early vote, and then election day is March 29th.
Well, black folks, this is where we must show up and show out. And this is real simple. You cannot complain about what Jeff Landry is doing and his MAGA attorney general and Republicans now have a supermajority if you don't vote. That's how there's a guaranteed way for them to have power, and that is if you actually do not show up and vote. So I really hope folk now recognize what sitting at home does. It does nothing but make our lives worse and miserable. And again, I really hope that the black folks in Louisiana show up. So, man, continue the great work. You know, we'll certainly keep supporting it. The tour was awesome, and I just really hope that folk in Louisiana realize that what Stacey Abrams and Warnock and others did in Georgia can happen in Louisiana. But you can't talk about maximizing black power if you're not organized and mobilized.
That's right. Thank you so much, Roland. And vote no on all four.
Hello, I'm Isaac Hayes III, founder and CEO of Fanbase. Listen to what I'm about to tell you. The window to invest in Fanbase is closing. We've raised over $10.6 million of our $17 million goal. That means there's room for less than 6,370 people to invest in Fanbase for the average amount. The minimum to invest in Fanbase right now is $399. That makes you an owner in Fanbase today. Go to startengine.com/fanbase to invest. Why? Because current social apps have taken advantage of users for far too long, with content suppression, shadow banning, harmful racist content, and no real tools for monetization and equity. Fanbase has over 1.4 million users and counting, allowing anyone to reach all their following and monetize their content from day one. Social media is the new TV, and whoever owns the apps that distribute that content have the opportunity to own potential billion-dollar companies. While big platforms with uncertain futures are failing to serve their users, Fanbase is stepping up to fill the gap. Don't wait until it's too late. Invest now, invest for yourself and your future. Go to startengine.com/fanbase and own the next generation of social media.